Hey guys, today we're going to take notes on lesson 5-7, which is the last lesson in the book, but it's not going to be the last set of notes because we're only doing a portion. We did a portion of lesson 5-6 and a portion of lesson 5-7 today. So this is going to be, now we're going to focus in on actually physically graphing on the coordinate plane. And what we have been doing is having a graph already on the coordinate plane. Come on, you. Oh, well. I give up on it. And then we were identifying the coordinates of that particular point. Excuse me. But now we're going to actually physically graph. So today's date is going to be 1/23/19. Now, my notes should take 1 page. That's how much I took, but I don't know about you guys. So let me just reiterate. If you go a second page, that's fine, but title it the same exact title, okay? So today, I'm going to start off with our mystery. It's a phrase, "This is us." Instead of watching This Is Us, I'm making a video for you guys, so you're welcome. All right, here we go. So remember, this is us. So today we're going to talk about what the graph needs to look like. Then we're going to talk about how to graph ordered pairs. And last, we're going to actually do some practice on this graph itself. So let's talk about graph setup. So what do you need your graph to look like? So we're going to talk about several different things. First, you need arrow caps at the ends of both axes. The reason for this is these are numbered lines, and that means they're going to continue to go in all 4 directions, okay? Next, we are going to make sure that the x-axis is labeled, and we're going to label the x-axis X on the right, not on the left, on the right. Okay, so it's really not up for negotiation. This is how graphs should look. Next, we're going to label the y-axis Y at the top, not at the bottom, at the top. Now, if you notice, our graph has already been labeled with the x-axis and the x-axis and y-axis have been labeled, but there are some things missing, and that's the next bit. We need to make some tick marks where our numbers are going to go. So we're going to mark tick marks, and here's the important thing. On the lines of the graph paper. What I mean by that is I do not want to see you making tick marks that are inside of a box. So somewhere between one line and the next line. That's not going to be okay for me. So very important that you're going to make the tick marks. So I'm going to do that right now, but I'm going to switch to black. So only on the lines of the graph paper am I going to make marks. There's no point in using graph paper if you aren't going to use the grid marks that have been provided for you. That's why we use graph paper. Everything is evenly and equally spread out. Okay? Next, we're going to use integers. So that's whole numbers and their opposites, to label the tick marks. And we are going to use, let me try that again. Label evens only. Now, some people are going, well, I want to do odds. Well, what's weird when you count with odds is you skip from the origin 1 space to 1, then you skip 2 spaces to get to 3, and so on. And that just looks weird. So just label every other number. To the right is positive, up is positive, left is negative, and down is negative. Now, what we don't do is we don't label above the lines. When it comes to the y-axis, you can label on the right or the left. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, well, how do you graph an ordered pair? So how to graph an ordered pair. Now, the reason why they call it an ordered pair, because the coordinates are in order x, y, pair meaning there's those two. Okay, so we're going to start where everyone should start, at the beginning, but we call our beginning the origin. So number 1, we're going to start at the origin. And if you remember, we talked about that being the 0, 0 point. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go to a different color. Next, number 2, we're going to move to the x coordinate on the x-axis. So notice I just said move there. I didn't ask you to mark anything, just move there. Okay, next, we're going to go from the x-coordinate, we're just resting there, from the x-coordinate, we're going to move to the y-coordinate. Okay, baby steps, we're only doing baby steps. Now we finally get to mark a point. Mark a point at this intersection. Now, as you saw in yesterday's practice, I'm going to clean that up. Sorry about that. Intersection. What you might have noticed is that they didn't always have us do find ordered pairs that were at integers. There was like 2.5, 1.5. So it is possible that we will be graphing between the lines, the tick marks, so in between the lines of the graph paper. But generally speaking, it's only halves, which we should be able to find pretty easily halfway through. Okay? Now, we need to label this guy. So we're going to label with a capital letter. And we would only use a capital letter to represent our point if they give us that capital letter. Or if they don't give us any letter to name the point, we're just going to use the problem number. Okay, and it's as simple as that. So, let me write down our directions at the bottom, and we're going to actually graph. So the directions are going to be graph and label each point on the coordinate plane. Graph and label each point on the coordinate plane. Okay. Now this time it doesn't ask for a quadrant. You kind of practiced that yesterday, but that could show up on the test. So first point is point P, and it's located, at having a hard time writing, -2, 4. So I'm going to take path on this one. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to move to -2 on the x-axis. And I'm going to go up to the level of 4 on the y. And that's where I'm going to mark my point. Oh, come on. Okay. Now, do I have to draw that connection from the origin to the x-coordinate up to the y-coordinate? And the answer is no, you do not. Okay. Now, I am going to label him, and he's called point P. Okay. Next problem. Point Q. Capital letters, remember, and this is at 0, -4. So on this one, we're going to start at the origin. 0 says don't go right or left from the origin, but move down to the y value of -4. So it's there that I mark my point. Okay, and that's going to be our point Q. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? Next one, let's do, R is at -1/2, -2.5. So let me just remind you again, it's not an ordered pair if you do not have parentheses. It's just two numbers separated by a comma. We need something more. Okay, let's start at the origin, and we're going to go to -1/2. So -1/2 would be halfway between 0 and -1. And then it wants us to go to -2.5 on the y-axis. So that's going to be between -2 and -3 halfway. And then we mark our point. And then we're going to label that R. Okay? So again, I don't need to see the aqua, pink, or purple lines. I just need to see the point, the dot, and I need to see it labeled. Okay? So last one, and then we're done with our notes for today. Point S, and that's going to be at 4.51. Okay. So let's do a green. We start at the origin, and we're going to move to where 4.5 is. That's going to be halfway between 4 and 5. So notice I'm not marking a point, I'm just kind of pausing. Then I'm going to go up to 1 on, that was kind of a weird spot, on the y-axis, and then that's where I'm going to make my point. And then that gets labeled S. And that's it. That's all you do in order to graph. You start at the origin, you move to the x-coordinate on the x-axis. From there, you're going to move to the y-coordinate. That's where you finally get to mark a point where those two values intersect. And then you're going to label with a capital letter or the problem number. All right, good luck with this, guys.